Hello, and welcome to Tart and Touchdown episodes. And this week, we are breaking down Super Bowl 61, a game that didn't turn into a shootout that many predicted, but instead became a physical, defensive battle that was decided in the trenches. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube and all podcast platforms to get the latest podcast as they drop, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok for all our latest content. First up, joining me is fellow Patriots doubter, Gavin. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Although I feel I'm going to end up playing devil's advocate tonight because I think everyone's been a Patriots doubter.
Oh, well, and I mean, technically, Dan did go for the Patriots when we talked about it in our previous show, but I feel like he maybe regretted his choices as we were watching the game together. Dan, how are you this evening?
I'm not too bad. Yeah, Super Bowl 60 did not go the way I was expecting it to go. I did say on last week, I just had a feeling they might do it. I think my head told me they weren't going to do it, but I just had one of those feelings that they might do it. Obviously, it was well misfounded. We'll break that down as we go through the show.
Yeah, I feel like you let your heart speak over your head, but I mean, that's...
Well, to be fair, it wasn't my heart. I'd tell you the Cowboys would have won it, but anyway, that's not different.
Well, they weren't even close to being in it, so,
exactly.
You know, we can just segue right past that. Just to give a very quick shout out before we begin, we'd like to say a big thank you again to the Scotsman Group and Committee Room 9 team for allowing us to come along and host the NFL quiz on Super Bowl Sunday. We had such a great night, and thanks to the people that were there that came over and said hi to us. So we're very much looking forward to being back when the season resumes later in the year. And with all of the housekeeping now done, let me set the tone with an overview of the Super Bowl. So the Seattle Seahawks came away victorious in a game defined by relentless defensive pressure, controlled quarterback play, and a dominant performance from Kenneth Walker, who walked away with Super Bowl MVP after carrying the offensive load when it mattered most. For the Patriots, it was a tough night on the biggest stage. Drake May, so impressive throughout the regular season, struggled under constant pressure from Seattle's defensive line, and the New England offense just never really found its rhythm. The Seahawks dictated tempo, won the field position battle, and avoided the costly mistakes, while the Patriots simply couldn't protect their young quarterback long enough to unlock their playmakers. Add in a record-breaking Bad Bunny halftime show that captured global attention, and Super Bowl 60 proved to be as culturally significant as it was tactically intriguing. So let's get into it. And let us begin with the quarterbacks. So there's been a lot said this week about Drake May playing scared on the biggest stage. 6 sacks, constant hits, hurried throws. And in the regular season, he had a 31-8 touchdown to interception ratio, but in the postseason, he managed just 4 touchdowns with 2 interceptions, and the drop-off continued from there. In this game, he completed 27 out of 43 attempts for 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Consistently under pressure in this game, his efficiency fell dramatically compared to Darnold's. He looked hesitant at times, double clutching, holding the ball, and missing a couple of deep shots early. So, Dan, did May look rattled from the first quarter, or was this just the Seahawks defensive line completely overwhelming the Patriots offensive line?
I think I said to you very early in the game that I thought Drake May was playing scared. I think I noticed it very early on. He did get sacked on the first drive. I think it was second down he gets sacked. Or first or second down he gets sacked anyway by Witherspoon. And then I think it was the play after he then got harried. They had to throw the ball away in third down. And that was in the first drive of the game. But even with that, I mean, the Seahawks defensive line did get at him all night and come to kind of reasons for that. But even before, I felt they put too much pressure. I don't know what happened. He just looked like a rabbit in the headlights. I felt he just wasn't connecting these throws. There was no rhythm. And I think scared is the right way to say it. I don't know if the occasion got the better of him, or I really don't know what happened to him on Sunday night. He just became an average quarterback after being such a good quarterback all year. I mean, boy, wasn't even average because he didn't even play at an average level, but he just looked like a shell of the way he has played this season. And I don't think you can put that down to anything to do with scheduling or anything like that, because you've still got to go out there and play well to win these games. He just looked, I don't know, he just looked lost, looked scared. We talked about CJ Stroud in the playoffs. That was what it reminded me of. Like, we'll use it as if he just dissolved and lost, as if he just lost all confidence very early in the game, and it was never coming back.
Yeah, even like we spoke about it during like the warm-up, so you could like maybe see he was maybe trying to put on a bit of a front, because I think he was scared from the offset. I mean, I don't like to use the word scared. I just think he was obviously feeling the pressure about the whole thing, and you could see him there standing there with his shoulders down, like puffing up his chest, and it just didn't feel like Drake May. And we don't know him obviously, but it
Yeah.
felt maybe uncharacteristic for him.
Yeah,
I
like
think.
you said, Joe, we watched, he was getting interviewed right before kickoff, he was getting interviewed, and he was standing holding himself like that, as if he was, and I said to you, I think he looked as if he was trying to look tough. I don't know if he was even just nervous talking to the camera and he was just trying to get himself comfortable. Something was just off with him all night. We'll probably never know what it was. Maybe it was just the occasion, maybe it was the pressure. But as we'll talk about the Seahawks defensive, they did get to him, but I think by that point, it was already gone by that point. I don't think the defence is the reason for his mentality. The way the stats came out and the way everything the game unfolded, 100% was to do with the Seattle Seahawks defence. But I don't know if right from the off, his mentality just, I don't know what it was. It just didn't seem right. And the Seahawks defence on top of that was a recipe for disaster for them.
Yeah, they could read it. I mean, we know that from reading from getting some more intel, they could just totally tell what everything he was doing. They just knew it. Gav, do you think, is this a young quarterback learning the hardest lesson on the biggest stage, or is there a genuine concern about he maybe handles elite pressure?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really important point. You say the youngest quarterback, because other than Dan Marino, Drake May is the youngest quarterback to play in the Super Bowl. So actually, there's very few people you can really give it a fair comparison to. This is someone that's in his second year playing in the league, never mind playing in the Super Bowl. I think there's been others. Ben Roethlisberger played in the Super Bowl. His second season, won the Super Bowl, but really didn't have a lot to do with that victory himself, statistically. I'd say I'd play devil's advocate, and I think if we look at it, I think he definitely wasn't helped by his offensive line. There was a number of times where he was playing with his own lineman in his face, if it wasn't Seattle's lineman. I think, it was particularly in that left side of the line, the guard struggle, but Will Campbell in particular looked like he was having a really tough time during the course of the game. So I really don't think that helped. But obviously one of the points we've mentioned is that Seattle were able to do most of this without bringing extra pressure throughout the game. They only actually blitzed the Patriots 11 times during the course of the game. But when it did, you mentioned May's stats earlier, but when he was blitzed, he was 4 of 10 for 22 and a pick. It was pretty ugly. I think one thing that I certainly picked up on was Seattle, when we did choose to blitz, it was often Witherspoon coming from nickel. Wasn't just coming off the edge, was coming straight through the line. Guy was just so agile, kind of dancing around defensive linemen, which is incredible to see. So there's a lot that we can put on what Seattle did. I think certainly nerves were a factor, but Patriots did struggle to protect May.
I think it's less that I don't think there's a necessary for the Patriots really to worry about anything. I do still think that Drake May is Drake May. I just think this was a brutal matchup for them, and we could kind of all see it coming. And the writing was maybe on the wall for them. You can talk about their schedule and you can talk about the way they ran through the playoffs, but I think the writing was maybe a little bit on the wall for them, particularly for the O-line. Dan, do you think in order for them to have won that game, do you think they needed the regular season Drake May rather than maybe like the more cautious version we saw? Because we were talking about it during the game. You could see that he just wasn't wanting to throw the ball. He just didn't seem to trust any single player that he had out there.
Yeah, I think we'd said it last week in the preview show that, and I think that question, I put that question to Brian. It was something like, we talked about which wide receivers does he trust. You mentioned it was Stephon Diggs, we said had to get in the game, he didn't. So, but a lot of that was, I don't think there wasn't a lot of drop passes or catches that wide receivers should have made. It was just a lot of, well, it was pressure, but I still think that even when he wasn't pressured, his passing was off as well. So he didn't really give his wide receivers much of an option either. So did they not trust him? Did they not trust himself to make the throws? Because the Seahawks, we know the Seahawks secondary, they call themselves the dark side for a reason. They are elite. So did they buy into that? Did they think these guys are that good that I need to kind of dial back on what I'm trying to do? But as we'll come on to with Sam Darnold, he didn't even do the safe stuff. He didn't even just keep it basics and pick up the yards when he needed to pick up the yards. Which he was good at doing in the regular season. The Patriots, they did good. We mentioned they don't have elite receiver. Stephon Diggs was elite, maybe not anymore. But they've done enough. They moved the ball enough. They spread it about a bit. Yeah, Matt Collins obviously will come to a good couple of catches. We had Henry's been decent for him in the regular season, so he has been spreading the ball about and getting his team down the field. That just didn't happen the other night. If he'd had the Drake mate playing the regular season, there would have been a difference. 100% would have been a difference. Would it have won the game? Yeah, not sure.
It was interesting as well. You could kind of like when we got to the fourth quarter, when obviously they eventually actually scored something, you could sort of see it was almost like he'd been taken off to the side and been told, who cares? Just do what you want. Just try and do something, right? Because there were 2 amazing bomb passes that he threw, and they were so tight windows. I was like, how have you just played 3 quarters like this, and now you're just pulling a
back-to-back plays, wasn't it? Like that, the first one was ridiculous because he threw it into like a circle of about 5 DBs, and was it Hunter Henry for that one? I think it was Matt Collins. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the 2 of them. Just came out of nowhere, and in the middle of it, the next one was to Matt. In fact, it was Matt Collins. It was back to back because the next one was in the touchdown. So it was 2, and I've actually got my notes. Where was that the whole game? And like you said though, the pressure was off at that point. The game was done. They knew they weren't coming back into it. So did they just come out and that the pressure was off, the shackles were off, and just became the Drake May that we all know? I think that's what's happened. As soon as the pressure was off, his shoulders were relaxed, and he just went back into his natural game. And the Patriots must be thinking, why could you not have done that for the first 3 quarters?
Like, is that when you get the inexperience and you get youngness coming in and never being in this position before, not knowing when the pressure's on, you still have to perform.
But then we'll say Sam Darnold's never been in this position either.
I know. Well, and on the mention...
There you go.
Well, just when you're on the mention of Sam Darnold, let's flip it round and talk about it, because he played safe when it counted. And it worked. So even on paper, his stat line doesn't necessarily jump off the page. So across the season, he threw for 4,048 yards with 25 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, plus 4 rushing scores. But this performance was much more about efficiency. So in 19 of 38 attempts for 202 yards, 1 touchdown, and crucially, no interceptions. Avoided killer mistakes, handled pressure significantly better, no reckless throws, no turnovers. So Gav, was this Darnold playing it safe, or just was this exactly what the Seahawks needed to do in a defensive Super Bowl?
I think it's absolutely both. The answer is yes to what you've said. I think it's funny because we've just talked about Drake May and how he's had a terrible game. Actually, this isn't entirely dissimilar to what Drake May did in the AFC Championship game. Protected the ball, minimised the negative plays. Darnold himself only took 1 sack. But when you have a game as tight as this, and I think it's fair to say that as much as we talked about the Patriots' strength of schedule, we talked about Drake May's troubles in this game and the Patriots' offensive line, the Patriots' defence had a really good game throughout. They did not make life easy. They were bringing pressure on Darnold. Gonzalez in the backfield had a fantastic game as well. He broke up several big plays, potentially saved 2 touchdowns in the game. This was not an easy task for Sam Darnold, and that's always been the book in him. The biggest games, he's folded, he's turned the ball over, and he's not done any of that. So when the game's tight, it's kind of almost like rugby. Seattle just kept the scoreboard ticking over. You had the 5 field goals kicked. That was a record in itself. And maybe that's not particularly exciting for the neutral fan watching it, but you got to a stage where Seattle had built a 2-score lead without finding the end zone, and it never really looked in any danger.
No, not at all. Dan, do you think in a game where a defense is so defensive dominated, do you think mistake-free quarterback play is more valuable than chasing a big highlight throw?
Oh, 100%. I think, see, the first couple of drives from the Seahawks, there was a couple of passes and we all looked at it and went, oh, that was close. There was a couple of things where maybe it would have been an interception, but there was ones you thought that was a bit of a risky throw. But I think the difference was after that, I thought, I can't do that. And he kind of dialed it back a wee bit, and he just picked up the yards he had to pick up. I mean, I think I think I remember GSN having 1 big play, but not much more than that. It wasn't even big. 16 yards was his longest. He did pick up that injury, the concussion.
Yeah, he went out of that injury for a little bit, so he was a bit MIA for a while. But then he came back.
The Patriots did keep him out of the game before that, though. Like I've mentioned, Christian Gonzalez, I name-checked him last week. He was unbelievable for the Patriots. Gav said he saved 2 touchdowns with 2 ridiculous plays. It wasn't even just basic. It was 1 tip away and one he nearly intercepted the second one. That was ridiculous play for him. So they did keep JSN quiet to an extent. He only got 27 yards on 4 catches. Darnold took what he needed and he spread it about as what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different receivers. Nobody got any more than 60 yards. 3 of them with 27 or 26 yards. He just done what he had to do. And they schemed it perfectly. They knew what they had to do. They knew Jay Senator, Shaheed were going to be picked up by Gonzalez. He took a couple of shots at him, didn't work. So he just moved it about. And it worked. And it got him enough. It got him down the field. 202 yards, like you said, but they only threw the ball 19 times. Well, he threw it more than that, but only 19 completions. So he threw it for 50% completion rates. That shows you that the Patriots defence was doing something to stop him. But he just done enough. 19 completions for 202 yards is pretty impressive. I've said he had to get the points on the board. So all he knew he had to do was get his team into at least field goal range because they knew he'd just keep adding the points on. And they just took what the Patriots gave them. And there was nothing flashy about it. The longest catch was 23 yards to Cooper Kupp. And I still don't think that was a catch either. Yeah, I mean, I still think that was out of bounds. But fair play, heads up to the Seahawks. He just got to the line and threw it through the next play. So, yeah, 23 yards was the longest throw of the game. That shows you he did not do anything flashy. He kept it safe. He knew what he had to do. And I think himself, he knows if he had thrown an interception early in that game, it would have got in his own head. And I think he dialed that back and thought, let's just play this safe. Let's just do that. Yeah, flashy plays will get you loads of yards, but you miscalculate one of them and it could be game over. So I think the Darnold schemed it perfectly for Darnold. Obviously, Darnold himself had to throw the passes, but a lot of that will come from the play call, and it might be Darnold would have known, and Clint Kubiak would have known that we need to make sure we just play easy, mistake-free football and do not give the Patriots a chance. And that's what they did. The game plan worked perfectly, and it's easy to say that after the fact, I mean, but just getting those field goals on the board and just adding the points on and just keeping your offence on the field. It shows, like, as well for your offence as well, it shows, like, yeah, okay, we're not scoring touchdowns, but you know what? See, we're on the field. Still putting points on the board. Points on the board are more important.
One thing I think we really need to do, though, is just to give some flowers here, because I'm going to just list off a few names here. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and less so Josh Rosen. He was that class of 2018. You know, if you'd said in 2018 that Sam Darnold was going to be the first one to win a ring, actually, there probably would have been a lot of people said that, because aside from Lamar, who wasn't really as high up everyone's draft boards, the other four everyone thought were going to be superb prospects, and actually 3 of the 4 is absolutely panned out that way. But if you'd said 2 years ago that Darnold was going to be the first one to win a ring, I think very few people would have agreed with you there. But it's a hell of a class, and neither of them have reached the absolute pinnacle up to this point. So, you know, congratulations to Sam Darnold, because it just shows you, you know, you can come in with all the fanfare that you want, but it is still really tough to make it in the league. He has put in the work. He's put in the air miles, traveling around from team to team. But yeah, it's fully earned, fully deserved.
Well, I think a lot of the credit needs to go to the coaching team as well, because obviously they've seen something in him. Like, well, we seen what he done in Minnesota last year, so we could see the talent was there if they could have the right scheme for him and the right players around about him. But the play calling's crucial in this. You're not asking Sam Darnold to throw the ball 60 yards numerous times a game. He'll take the shot if he has to, but he's not that type of quarterback. And that's what I think the Vikings realised last year, and I think that's also the Seahawks have played on that advantage this year and that strength. He'll do what we need him to do. We don't need him to be flashy. We just need him to get us down the field. We just need to get to score touchdowns. And obviously they get the touchdowns eventually in the Super Bowl, but he got them down the field and he kept the offence moving and kept them on the field. That's what mattered.
Well, I guess to ask you both this question, I guess we'll start with you, Gav. Do you think, I'll include the NFC Championship game in this too, do you think it changes the narrative around Darnold in big games, and we probably can't pull the he's going to turn into a pumpkin kind of card again?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, both you and I say we'd taken the Seahawks at the start of the playoffs to win the whole thing. And I think not only that, but after that 13-3 win that the Seahawks had over the 49ers in week 18, I thought not only could they win it, but I had a horrible feeling that they could brutalise everyone in their path. Now, to be fair, that the Rams was a real competition in that NFC Championship game, but I think you know, you wouldn't have necessarily said that, well, it's because Darnold is going to light it up. And if you look at stat line, he didn't necessarily do that, but he did what he had to. He avoided the negative plays. He avoided the mistakes. There was never really a time where momentum was against the Seahawks. I mean, certainly, I think you could say that a real war of attrition for stretches, but it was always the Seahawks that were just continuously edging away throughout the game. Obviously, once they finally got that touchdown in the fourth quarter, you could tell that was absolutely game over. But Sam Darnold did exactly what he needed to do to make sure that it was just all going Seattle's way.
Dan, do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think every quarterback's got a pumpkin game in them. It doesn't matter how good you are, right? And I think the problem has been with Sam Darnold, he's had a lot of them in the past. He has, right? But I've just looked at the stats. Sam Darnold never threw one single interception in 3 playoff games.
Nope.
Guy that's meant to be an interception machine, 3 playoff games, 3 big games, 49ers, the Rams, and the Patriots, never threw a single interception. So he's got up against some good defensive players and some good defensive schemes. Not a single interception. So he played mistake-free football throughout the whole of the playoffs. So does it change the narrative? I think it does. Would Sam Darnold go out in week 1 and throw 4 interceptions? Yes, he could. But so could Josh Allen, so could Lamar Jackson, so could anybody else. So I think Darnold now deserves to be shown that, yeah, do you know what? He can play in the big stage. And maybe for him it was a mentality thing. Maybe that game Gavin mentioned, that 49ers game was our biggest game of the season in week 18. And he went out there and it was a tight game, there was not much in it. Maybe him winning that game's kind of got that monkey off his back and he's thought, well, do you know what, actually, I can win these big games. And then he went on the playoffs, they absolutely hammered the 49ers. That Rams game could have went either way and they won it. And then obviously Super Bowl, they kind of dominated the game to an extent. So yeah, he can do it. His narrative should change, but like I say, anybody can have a bad day. And I think now when you look at Darnold, when he has one of these bad days, it's going to be a case of, yeah, it's a bad day. It's not going to be, oh, there's the old Sam Darnold back. As much some people will still say it, but I think going forward, that will be the case. It'll be that was an off day rather than, oh no, the old Sam Darnold's back.
Yeah, I think he now has easily pushed himself up into that top 10, top 5 quarterback discussion points. I think that's something that's definitely looks like to be on the cards for him. Right, let's now talk about who was the MVP of the Super Bowl. Kenneth Walker III, 135 yards on 27 carries, and that is controlling the clock. That's wearing a defense down, and that's taking pressure off of your quarterback. So he topped 1,000 rushing yards in the regular season and saved his most important performance for the biggest stage. Dan, was Walker the most important player on the field given how this game unfolded?
Outside of Jason Myers, and yes. I mean, we were on track for Jason Myers getting the MVP in the Super Bowl at one point in this game. Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it, how important the run game was going to be for both teams. And the Seahawks executed it. The Patriots just didn't at all, which we'll come to in a minute. But Kenneth Walker coming out, we knew they didn't have Charbonnet. He had Halani, isn't it? Is that right? George Halani is the RB2. He only had 2 carries, so Walker did do all the running himself. So it wasn't a case of he got that break where Charbonnet would come in or RB2 would come in and give him a break. They ran the ball 32 times, including 2 scrambles with Sam Darnold, and he had 27 of them. And the thing was, an average of 5 yards a carry. It's an easy game when you're carrying 5 yards every single time you're touching the ball. I think, he said, the key part of it was obviously picking up the first downs and the yards, but it was the clock, running that clock and just take the time off and extending the drives. And like we said, those drives end up in points quite a few times. So that was the key to it. And yeah, I mean, I think the way the game played out was the most important player on the field. And regularly, yes, Myers obviously put the points on the board for them, but Walker getting the spaces and getting the yards and get the time off the clock made a massive difference to that Seahawks game plan. But as we know, the Patriots didn't do anything at all on the ground, which didn't help their case either.
Well, yeah, because when you look at it, you can totally see that's where the main difference is. Because even every single time the Patriots were on the field, they were coming off again. It was a minute and a half, and they were off. Nothing was working for them at all. So there was no clock management from the Patriots side.
The Patriots ran the ball 13 times in the whole game. 13 times. 67 plays. Even that, they weren't that far behind that they had to throw the ball. At no point, obviously, it got to the 15, then at that point did, but when it was 3-0, 6-0, even 9-0, the field goals, they didn't have to throw the ball. But like you said, they did, and it resulted in so many 3-and-outs and so many punts for them that they just couldn't get any momentum going. I think 42 yards combined with their 2 running backs. For Henderson and Stevenson, 42 yards combined. Drake May was our biggest rusher on the night. Drake May ran for 37 yards. So he ran for nearly the same amount of yards as their 2 running backs combined.
Nuts.
I don't know. We spoke about how important it was for the Patriots to get the run game going because it was crucial for them. And for some reason, they either went away for it because it wasn't working to start with, or they decided they weren't going to run the ball. They thought they could get it through the air. I don't know what the game plan was, but it didn't work, obviously.
It was not on the cards. Gavin, in a league that's maybe become a bit pass heavy, do you think this shows that a dominant run game really still travels in big moments?
Absolutely. I mean, especially in a game as tight as this, where you're able to just moving the sticks and the clock, crucially, because I guess that's the big thing. When you get the run game going, then you're just continually taking, every first down can take 2 minutes off the clock and closer to the end of the game. And that's exactly what you really want to be doing whenever a fixture's in doubt, is just shortening the game. And that's exactly what Walker did. Continuous, it's not just having these, chunk plays. It was continuous, moving the ball. So I think there's absolutely going to be a place for it. It's the strategy hasn't ever really changed at the end of the day. If you can run the ball, that's going to eventually free up opportunities for the passing game, and vice versa. Obviously, if you can move the ball through the air, that is going to get people, the defense, on their heels a bit. So you're always going to need that balance. I guess I do want to just, seeing as we're kind of talking about MVPs, or just to give another shout out. Dan's actually talked about Myers, the kicker. We probably will never get a chance to do this, but in a game that was so dominated by defenses, the punter,
Michael Dixon.
Oh yeah,
superb.
He had a great game. Wow.
And this is actually something where, again, maybe we're not going to get a chance to talk about this again, but stats are probably not doing him enough credit, because he had 3 of his 7 punts were downed inside the 20. Actually, 2 of them were downed inside the 5, and the other one went out of bounds at the 6. So when you flip the field like that, you back the Patriots up before you even start thinking about, well, actually, how bad of a game Drake May had. A big part of that is because he was under pressure in terms of his field positions. I think, really, I think as much as the big story of the game for Seattle is the defense, obviously it was all 3 phases of the team were contributing this one.
Shout out to special teams. Who would have?
This Aussie rule style kick. It's ridiculous when you watch the ball going out. They just can't catch it. That's why, there was a lot of fair catches, especially from the Seahawks feed. But because Barringer had the same, he was the same for the Patriots. He had 8 punts, 4 inside the 20. They both averaged around about 40 or so. Dixon was 48 yards a punt, and Barringer was 45. This new style punter has became a bit of a weapon. Punting before used to be, let's just try and hope we get it into the 20, whereas now they're teams are deliberately going and looking for punters like Michael Dixon, like Dan Whelan, who have a different kicking motion to get the ball, because he doesn't kick it that high. Dixon's kicks quite low compared to a normal punt, but it's the way the ball travels in the air that makes such a difference. Yeah, both punters were pretty impressive. That's something Brian will be loving this. As a proud talking about punters.
I love it.
But yeah, it did make a massive difference that both teams started a lot of their drives inside their own 20 duty punts.
Yeah, and I don't think that helped. A couple, when just talking about the ones that were basically maybe starting in the end zone, you could really see him you could really see the panic coming in, because he's like, I'm going to get sacked in this end zone, and then that's going to be 2 points on the board for the Seahawks, and then we're down again. Dan, do you think a running back winning Super Bowl MVP kind of changes maybe how we talk about positional value for them?
I don't think so. Thinking about it, no, I don't think it does, because it was down to the game plan. Obviously Walker's got to take the ball, he's got to carry it, he's got to pick up the yards, no doubt about that. But I think a lot of it was down to they knew how to game plan to get through the Patriots. If, for example, Arnold had scored another touchdown and got 100 yards, he would have got MVP. Walker got it, and they're not taking this away from him because he had a good performance. Nobody else really deserved it on the night. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't as if it was there's a debate about who's going to be MVP here. The debate was, is it Kenneth Walker or is it Jason Myers? That was the debate on the night. And there was no, we're not sure who's going to get this. And that's not doing it, I'm not trying to do him a disservice here, because he did 100% deserve it. But I don't think it changes the narrative in terms of that. Running backs are always going to be very valuable for teams, especially when you game plan like that and they execute it the way that the Seahawks did. Will it change the narrative of how we change the positional value? Probably not, because only the top elite running backs are going to get paid the big money, whereas quarterbacks, wide receivers, you don't have to be elite to get paid a good chunk in this league, because they're few and far between to get ones at that kind of top tier. Whereas a lot of the running backs now, you've got 1 or 2 previously you'd have a lot of elite running backs, whereas now I think you've probably got that top tier of maybe 5 or 6 top running backs, and then the rest are in that kind of middle range where they are good and they're good enough and they do the job they need to do, but they're not taking that step up to the next level.
I think you've got to remember as well that, coming into the season, Walker wasn't the clear-cut number one in Seattle. Of course, Charbonnet went out during the course of the season, so it has been a kind of a running back by committee situation. And I guess talking about the point about positional value, specifically durability with the position is always going to be an issue. So yes, we've seen a number of running backs having superb seasons. Obviously, Saquon Barkley was, the standout last season, but what's he done this year? He's contributed, sure, but there's massive regression. And I think that's the thing. If you compare it to, it ultimately is a quarterback-driven league. Your running backs are always going to seem a bit more replaceable.
I'll give you an example. Look at the stats in the regular season. Running back 5 for the year was Devon Achane. He's a good running back, but is he in that top elite level of the top 5? I wouldn't say so. But you pick up the yards, you get the average yards, you get the touchdowns in, your team does well, and that's what Walker's done, and that's what he done in the Super Bowl. Picked up the yards, you got his team down the field. Does it make him an elite running back? No. Does it change the position of value? I don't think so. But he's done the job he's there to do without being elite, and that's all matters to teams now with running backs. If you have people like a James Cook, a Derrick Henry, or a Jonathan Taylor, then 100% excellent. That is great for your team, but teams don't need that anymore. Previously, you needed a running back like that to be successful. You don't need that anymore. You need a running back that is going to get you 5 yards a carry, is going to carry for 100 yards a game. They don't need to do anything flashy anymore. If they do, it's a bonus, but they don't need to do it. Because look at the two teams that are in the Super Bowls. None of them had a flashy running back. Even going back, look at the playoffs. McCaffrey was obviously in the playoffs, but he's not done a lot this year. But if you look at the championship games, was there many elite running backs in that playoff category? No, they were all good and do the job they need to do and pick up the yards they need to do without actually doing anything too big. So I don't think it changes it.
So Dan's off to be a running back in the NFL, everyone. That's it. That's
why I'm bulking up.
That's why he's been on the PC. That's why he's been doing the high rocks. Right, we've mentioned it a bit, but let's kind of talk about what the centrepiece was in this game, which was battle in the trenches. Seattle's defensive front is one of the deepest and most disruptive in the NFL this year. In the regular season, they finished top 5 in pressure rate and sacks allowed, and that carried over to the Super Bowl. Whereas the Patriots' offensive line, by contrast, near the bottom in pressure allowed, and I didn't know this, but surrendered 5 GACs in each of New England's playoff games. In this game in particular, Seattle's rushers consistently beat blocks and got home. Patriots left tackle Will Campbell, playing through a knee injury, had a particularly difficult night and allowed repeated pressures on May. And Seattle pressured May nearly 48% of the time, even when rushing only 4, which is one of the highest rates seen this postseason, and they didn't need to blitz much to get home. Gav, how much was this a talent mismatch up front versus a schematic victory by Seattle's defensive staff?
Oh, it's a talent mismatch, and it's also an experience mismatch, because actually Will Campbell is a rookie. I believe the left guard was also a rookie.
There was 2 rookies starting, yeah.
So, I mean, that's always going to be a really tough situation. We've talked about May being young, but and we also talked about positional value. So if you talk about your quarterback being the most important player in the field, the next most important players are the ones protecting him, especially on that left-hand side of the line. So I think there's an obvious weakness for the Patriots in this one. I think you mentioned obviously Campbell carrying a bit of an injury there, so it's something that potentially is going to improve through experience. I think the suggestions that actually Campbell will probably shift to another position on the line as he continues his Patriots career. But I think that was a real challenge for the Patriots. And obviously, from Seattle's point of view, if you can bring pressure with 4, then obviously what that then enables you to do in terms of your coverage schemes, you've got 7 people back, you can throw doubles, you can have safety help, whatever you want to do. A lot of what Seattle ultimately did was zone defense. It wasn't anything particularly exotic in terms of their coverages, but when you're consistently pressuring the quarterback with just 4 people, it's going to make life difficult for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Wow, it's like I sent you the notes ahead of time because you just segued that perfectly. When that front 4 can generate that level of consistent pressure, without anything extra. How does a quarterback change their approach on that?
We spoke about the previous show that we thought that May would be fine under pressure because he can move and he can be mobile in the pocket. He just couldn't get away from it. I mean, Gav, you mentioned Will Campbell. Where he's carrying injury or not, I don't know. He allowed 14 pressures in that whole game. 27% of snaps became pressures. That's the most that anybody has given up this season. To compare that in his last 6 games, which included playing the Broncos defence and the Texans defence, we allowed 13 in total in the last 6 games. He just couldn't deal with this Seahawks 4. And like you said, they didn't bring all-out blitzes, they brought 4. That's nothing like a standard offensive line. I'm not going to say they can deal with it in every single play, but you shouldn't be giving up 6 sacks to 4. And we spoke about this, we kind of touched on it earlier on, was Witherspoon. Witherspoon was ridiculous. You just game planned him. Looking at his stats, he got 3 quarterback hits. He got the sack as well, the tackle for loss, which would be the sack. But he said post-game that Mike McDonald had picked up on this, the offensive line of the Patriots have tendencies when they're set certain ways, and the Seahawks noticed that. So I think from getting what Witherspoon said, he was given a bit of a free leash that if you see this setup, just go. I don't think some of the plays might have been set up that he automatically blitzes on that play, but something was, and I think there was one player, thinking about it now, I remember one of the it was a linebacker or safety pointing to him to go. So they've obviously seen something that they thought, and he's just went whenever they've seen that tendency. And I don't think I've seen a corner blitz as much in a game and be as successful in a game. So yeah, he got the 3 hits and the 1 sack, but it was the pressure. I mentioned earlier on about the sack in the first drive was him. The pressure on it, the play later was him. And when you said, he just came through the line. It was as if nobody even blocked him. He just was waltzing through that line as if nobody was there. And he came off the edge a couple of times as well. The one for the fumble, which was the third or fourth quarter, whenever that was, 2 of them came off that edge. He got the sack and then, what's his name? Nuosu, he recovered a bit. Both of them came from the right-hand side of the Patriots line. So it made a massive difference. And just if you can press with 4 without having to send any extra bodies just generally, then you can do whatever you want in defence. You can sit with however many want you back because you know that the 4 up front are going to do the job. So you could have 7 DBs on the field and 4 up front, and you know they're going to do the job. You don't need any linebackers. You don't need anybody extra to go and press. Do you know what I mean? And that's what made the difference, is that 4 getting up there. Sorry, I've just realised I've not even answered your question.
It's all right, you're
but
fine.
That 4 getting up there made a massive difference, but we did expect Drake May to be able to handle that better than he did. We did get out of the pocket. It's because he was running for his life. It wasn't, they didn't do a good job of moving the pocket either. There was one play where I think it was Byron Murphy pushed the offensive lineman into Drake May and still sacked him because he gets through him. The Patriots offensive line, it didn't give me a chance. We spoke all about Drake May at the start. We'll not go over all that again. Did he change his approach? Did the offensive coordinator change their approach to the game? I don't think they adjusted enough, because what do? You put an extra lineman in, you put a running back in, you put a tight end in. Even just to get that nick on someone coming through the line, you just have to get them, bump them, knock them off their stride. They didn't seem to change their game plan or adjust. If they did, it wasn't visible and it wasn't noticeable. If they did change it, because it didn't seem to make a difference the whole game. Drake May could have changed his approach, but I don't think it would have made a difference.
Yeah, they definitely tried. I mean, I know certainly the tight end in particular trying to chip in a number of plays, but I think the problem is that it wasn't just one person that was generating that pressure. So, one of the things I talked about in the FC Championship was that Drake May took several sacks in that game, but only lost about 4 yards of play, because a lot of the time stepping up, he's minimising those losses. But the problem is that Byron Murphy in particular, pushing up the middle, there's nowhere for him to go, there's nowhere for him to step up. So he's just been suffocated all the time. But yeah,
they hit him. He got hit 11 times, 6 sacks, but it was 11 hits as well. That's the only times they actually made contact with him as well. You could probably double that for the amount of times they actually chased him out the pocket or put pressure on him.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it was brutal. It was brutal. It was difficult to watch at some parts. Gavin, we speak a lot when we're on the pod about how defense wins championships, right? Do you think this game proves that is still the most important part of championship football?
I think it's hard to say it's the most important part. But I think certainly for Seattle, that's their second Super Bowl victory, and both times it's come through absolutely suffocating defense. So certainly, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're going to say it's a factor. I think that there's lots of different ways to win a football game. at the end of the day. We've seen so many Super Bowls over the past few years that have been shootouts, and defense has made plays at critical moments, but they haven't necessarily dominated the game. So I think obviously, particularly with salary cap and so much money going in particular to the quarterback position, teams are always going to have to find different ways to win. But if you have an elite defense like the Seahawks do, then that is definitely going to put you in a position to succeed.
Well, there we go. So now we'll move off the playing field and let's move on to the other main performance of the night, which was Bad Bunny delivered a halftime show that reportedly averaged 128.2 million viewers, which even surpassed parts of the game broadcast, which isn't surprising. Sparked huge global engagement and plenty of debate. So Dan, did the halftime show outshine the game in cultural impact?
Oh, I think 100% did, because the game didn't really live up to the expectations in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, I think you can see, and we all know, we'll not go over all the criticism that was levied at the NFL and Bad Bunny before this. But as you said, Bad Bunny is the biggest selling artist in the world. See if he wasn't from Puerto Rico, would it be an issue? No, it wasn't an issue for most people of sensible minds. He wouldn't have that question. If I'd been Taylor Swift, for example, would anybody have questioned it? No. If it'd been anyone that was maybe European, would there be questioned? No, would not. Right. There's no issue there. For culturally wise, I think it shows the shift the NFL are trying to make. So the NFL know that he's the biggest selling artist. They know he will get eyes on to the Super Bowl. They know that they've got this big push in Latin America. They've got the games in Brazil. They've got the games in Mexico. They want eyes on the product. As much as Bad Bunny is a great performer, the NFL don't. I think that'll be part of their thinking. They're obviously not going to just pull some random person for the halftime show, but for them it's how do we get eyes on the product. Some people have just tuned in just for the halftime show. That's fine. Some people have tuned in a wee bit early. Some people have said watching after the halftime show to watch the game. And that's what the NFL need. They need eyes on the actual product. Kendrick Lamar last year, they knew all the stuff with him and Drake. They knew that was going to get eyes on the Super Bowl. They knew that he was going to sing the song. So people were going to watch to see that. And the NFL are not daft. There's a reason why they make so much money. Next year, who's it going to be? We don't know, but you guarantee it's someone who's going to put eyes on the product. It's not going to just be an average run-of-the-mill person that they think will be a good performance. They want someone that will give you that performance, but also will have that cultural impact that will put eyes on the show as well. Someone that we mentioned that if Kelsey retired, Taylor Swift would be number one on the list because she'll put eyes on the product. She's done it already. So that's, I think the NFL now looked at that aspect of not who's the best for performance-wise, but who's great at performing, but will put eyes on our product and make the NFL more cultural generally as well. It is something that's the biggest sport in America. Is they want eyes on it. They want people invested in the sport. And a lot of sports now and a lot of events, they're mixing popular culture and sport now. It's just a standard way things happen now. And the NFL played an absolute blinder with it this year, I think.
Like 100%. And you kind of, when you mentioned there about having the impact on, especially like the Latin America culture, and that's where they want to go. Do you think it kind of proves that the Super Bowl is just now about global entertainment as it is about the football?
I think it's the way I look at it is if you were wanting to watch the Super Bowl and you have an opinion in the halftime show, good or bad, you've got to remember that the NFL's already got your money. So I find myself increasingly saying this is, I think we said it in last year's Super Bowl show, I'm not the target audience for the halftime show, and that's fine. Okay. But I think what I can see watching it is it was a hell of a show. And for me, it wasn't even the music that jumped out. I think there was a really strong cultural message, but I think that actually came through in the creativity with the set. Yeah. Was actually one thing that really jumped out to me. You had all the different locations, kind of. It had sort of elements of the halftime show from LA a few years ago. We had Dre and Eminem, but actually I think it took it to a whole other level. And of course, the other thing you don't realise until afterwards is that all the bushes and the fields, actually people weren't they? Which is just, it makes sense. But the ability for the NFL to have you to suspend your disbelief and think, oh God, they've just created this forest in 15 minutes was amazing. You had the cafes and the bars and the nail salons and everything represented there. I think that was just really, really cool to see, and it really kind of brought out Puerto Rican.
What I loved about it as well, have you mentioned there, the way the set was, I'm like, it was very much, I think, like Kendrick Lamar last year. There was a story told as well, like all the different locations. Like Kendrick Lamar, the way his stadium was set up last year, like when he moved about all the different locations, it was storytelling within the performance as well. And it's like being at a concert. It's like you can see the different aspects of the performance. Of starts off this way, moves into that, and then moves into that. And I think you've seen that physically as well as audibly, like in terms of the songs, you can tell songs, but they set it up so that, like you said, Gavi moves section to section and tells the story. Same as Kendrick Lamar did last year. They done it in LA with obviously the clubs and the houses and stuff like that when they done Dre and Snoop and stuff like that as well. So it has become its own show in itself. I mean, it always has been, but previously it was people go up and sing, they have guests, they sing the songs and go off again, whereas now it has become an actual performance and an actual storytelling and an actual show, and it's working. And then it is the NFL, obviously, reaping the rewards of going down this. I think the flip on that has came since Apple took over, Gav. I don't know, would you say, since Apple took over production of these halftime shows, that this is the angle, and it's clearly working. Yeah. So, yeah, everybody always wonders who next year's halftime show is going to be, but I think this new era of the halftime shows makes you think even more. Like, I'm already thinking who could do it next year that could tell those stories and do that kind of performance, and there's probably not many people on the planet that could do it.
Yeah, I think it's been since, because Jay-Z and Apple Music's what's taken over, and you can see Jay-Z is, I feel like Jay-Z has always maybe been a storyteller, like especially when he's been doing his production work. It's always been like, I mean, you can even look at Beyonce's tour work, you can see the full spectacle. And a lot of people throw out names, like you can already see the people that are the same, like this person for next year. But you're right, has to follow that expectation of, you are going to go through and you're going to make something come to life. It can't just be, I'm going to stand in this position and look great and sing a song, which is always what tended to be our male performance in the Super Bowl halftime show rather than the female performance, because the female performance would come out and give a spectacle. Because even look at Lady Gaga, right, and your Katy Perry's, they didn't tell a story, but they were there. It was a full production. It was a full set. And now the men are doing it too, which is great. Which is great to see the expectation is still there on both sides. Sorry, Gav, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. Just the one thing I'm going to say, because this is our one chance every year to be arts critics, and the one thing I'm going to say, like the criticism, nothing to do with Bad Bunny himself, but actually the direction this one, you had that message to go out, which is the only thing more powerful than hate is love. Great message. It was actually obscured by all the flags. You figure out what it said, but I actually missed the killer shot at the end. Now, to be fair, there's plenty of cameras around the stadium that they've captured it. You can see it now, but at that moment in time, just have that one shot and that message clearly displayed. There's unmistakable. That was probably a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I was upset because you could, when he was holding the ball, like, because the ball had a message on it too, and there's just never a clean shot of it. But I don't know if it's when he was holding it, it must have rubbed a little bit, so there was never like a clean camera, because we were sitting there and I was going, what does that say? Like, me with my glasses out trying to figure it out. Yeah, I feel like I don't know if they were maybe not allowed to say it, or it had to be like at a specific angle because of obviously everything that was going on. I don't know if they were playing it a bit safe, but who really knows. But I guess now for maybe the wider big picture and the lasting impacts of the game for both teams. So Dan, do you think this loss was a necessary lesson for Drake May that will probably make him better in the long run?
Do I think it's a lesson from Drake? Yeah, he's going to have to learn from it. He's going to have to analyse his own performance. Obviously, the coaches will do it as well. The coaches can't analyse his mentality. Only he can do that. Only he can look at his performance and think, what was I feeling at that moment? What was it looking through my head? What was the emotions I was feeling? Why did I do that? Why did I throw that ball there? Why did I not do that? Only he can work that out schematically and stuff like that. The coaches can talk him through the mechanics and the technicalities of his performance, but he needs to look at this as a personal lesson, as in terms of his attitude and his mentality, and how he can learn from that going forward. Yeah, he has to learn from it. If he doesn't, then there's something wrong. There's a lot of aspects of what he needs to learn from. It's not just I didn't throw the ball here, or I didn't run here, or do that. Emotionally and mentally, physically for himself, he needs to look at that and analyse what went wrong more than just the actual technical side of it.
Do you think the Seahawks have maybe provided a bit of a blueprint So defense, run game, mistake-free quarterback play is potentially your run to the Super Bowl.
Well, the Seahawks, that's what they had before, wasn't it? This is the same
Yep.
blueprint that worked for them before. They had that Legion of Boom, they had Marshawn Lynch, they had Russell Wilson. It worked for them before. They've went back to that blueprint and it's worked again. I think it's very simplistic to say, because everybody knows that if you do that, you're going to be successful. Executing it is a completely different thing. Like, every team has got that game plan of have a good defense, have a good run game, and mistake-free quarterbacks. Yeah, that's the game plan for every team. Executing it is a completely different ball game, and there's so many aspects that come into it. We mentioned the Patriots' offensive line tonight. You need to have an offensive line that at least gives your quarterback a chance. You need to have wide receivers that are going to catch the ball. You need to have cornerbacks that are going to stop the ball. There's so many facets, and that's what I love about this sport. In football, you can have, in our football, you can have 2 or 3 absolute elite players and a team of good players, and it takes them to another level. In the NFL, everybody needs to be at a very high level. You can't get away in the NFL from just being average. You get found out very quickly. So everybody needs to play at that elite level. They might not put in elite performance all the time, but they need to play at that elite level every single snap of every single game. And that blueprint works if you execute it rightly and you have the right coaching staff to put that in place. We mentioned the tendencies of the offensive line of the Patriots. Those small things are the difference in this league. Is if you notice something that's going to give you that 1 second of advantage to get off on the snap, it makes a massive difference. And that's what happened Sunday night. The Seahawks picked up in that one tiny thing that we still don't know what it was. He didn't tell us, but it could be something as simple of they put their hand down this certain way, or they lean this way, or their foot goes. It's going to be something as ridiculous. It's not going to be anything that anybody watching on the TV is going to pick up on. But they've obviously watched hours and hours and hours of game film and thought, when he does that, that means that. When he does that, that means that. And that, 1% difference wins you the Super Bowl.
Yep. It just proves when coaching really counts and watching tapes really, really counts.
Yes.
And I guess to summarise, where do you think both teams go from here?
I'll start with the easy option of this. I'll go with the Seahawks first, because they're the easy option for me here. The Seahawks have just won the Super Bowl and they have $722 million in cap space. They can only go
How will this happen?
Do you know what I mean? Exactly. Because nobody expected it to happen. The Seahawks are now a very attractive option. I mentioned it last week with DeMarcus Lawrence. That Seahawks team last year wasn't, you could maybe see they're progressing something, but he said, I'm leaving Dallas to go there because I want to win a ring. Someone like DeMarcus Lawrence, who's one of the best edge rushers in the league, sees that last year before they've even won the Super Bowl, they become a massive attraction in free agency. And sometimes what will happen as well is players will want to go and play there, so the money might not necessarily be a big driver. So you can maybe underpay certain players because they're no longer coming to play for the Super Bowl champion. So you won't have to some other teams might have to throw money at people to attract them to come, because some players are a lot of players are motivated by money. But the Seahawks now have that, by the way, come play for us, we'll give you this amount of money. So they might pay you the same as any other team, but by the way, we're the Super Bowl champions. We can go and do this again, and that suddenly becomes a very attractive option for them. So I think for the Seahawks, they have lost Clint Kubiak though, so that's going to be interesting to see how they adjust to that, because that offense has been good under him. Seahawks have got a habit of keeping things inside in terms of they must have someone maybe lined up, because it's probably too late now to go out and get those top OC options, because they're all taking jobs elsewhere. So maybe keep that in-house in terms of bringing someone up from the staff. I spoke about Sam Darnold. He's now got that monkey off his back. They're going to get Charbonnet back next year. GSM was number 1 wide receiver in the league this year.
Is it
this
that
year,
many?
I've not actually looked. I should have looked at us, see free agents. Let's see. Shaheed, Kenneth Walker's up as well. Job at cornerback, Kobe Bryant, Woolen. There's a few players there that they really want to keep a hold of. But
Yeah.
they're not on big money. The biggest one is Charles Cross, a left tackle, but it looks like he'll probably see him on an extension or something like that anyway. So yeah, Shaheed, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jobe, Kobe Bryant. There's not a lot there that they need to really worry about in terms of if Shaheed leaves, could they replace him? Yes. He's not one of those players that is going to have a massive, devastating impact if they lose him. But again, if you're Rashid Shaheed, why are you going to want to leave Super Bowl champions? I mean, they paid him $3 million this year. Offer him $4 million to stay, he stays because you're Super Bowl champions. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they do in the free agency. But I think they do probably need another wide receiver, and they've got a good room there, but they probably need a good WR2, because is GSN going to have that level of productivity next year because nobody expected it this year? Is it one of those seasons where he just goes off and does it, or can he keep that consistently? You need another option there just in case he doesn't perform next year. So be interested to see how they do in free agency. But for the Seahawks, I think Seahawks problem the Seahawks have got is a division they're in. That's it.
Yeah.
If Seahawks were in any other
Brutal.
division in football, they would probably dominate it for years to come.
Maybe talk about a dynasty. Yep.
But the fact that they're in this division where the Rams are going to be the Rams, we know that. The 49ers, maybe we'll get players fit and we'll come back. Cardinals, forget the Cardinals for another few years yet. But their biggest problem is they're in that division. They could easily come out next year and not make the playoffs just purely because the Rams and the 49ers could just be as good as they always are. But Seahawks, I think, it sounds really daft because they've obviously just won the Super Bowl, but the future's looking very rosy in the Seahawks garden.
And how do you think it's looking at Gillette for the Patriots?
See, this is a more intriguing one, right? Because the Patriots have had a phenomenal season. You predicted the Seahawks, the Patriots would have a good season at the start of the season. I'll give you that.
But not
you
this.
would never have predicted them doing what they did, right? The Patriots peaked too soon is the question I'll ask, because we've seen it with other teams where they're building, and I used the Lions in this example a few times. The Lions, you can see they're building. I used it with the Packers as well, and I kind of mentioned it with the Bears as well. You can see they're building, and you can see where they're trying to go. Have they just got there too soon? Yeah. And that's the problem is you now, like, the expectation on that Patriots team now is to go back to the Super Bowl next year, and that's of no fault of their own apart from figuring out and winning football games. But the expectation, they've now set that expectation that, well, he's done it last year, why can't you do it this year? Their schedule next year gets a hell of a lot harder as well. So just throwing it out there, they're away to the Bills, the Bears, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Jags, the Seahawks. I'll say the Chargers. I'll put the Chargers in there because Chargers, we don't know what we're going to get with them. At home, they face the Bills, the Broncos, the Packers, the Vikings and the Steelers. I'm going to put. We don't know what we're going to get with them. Yeah. So it was at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games that you could conceivably see them losing next year.
Yeah, and how strong are those defenses they're going to come up against? And when you even look at the wider AFC picture for them, potentially you're looking at we don't know when Mahomes is coming back yet. We don't know that.
Back. No. Look at I don't think Mahomes plays a starting unless the Chiefs make the playoffs next year. I don't see Mahomes playing a start.
Okay, well, so take Mahomes at the question, right? You're looking at Lamar Jackson in a new scheme, so we'll see what happens with that. Yeah. We're looking at Joe Burrow coming back, and if the Bengals can pull an O-line from absolutely somewhere, then who knows what that's looking like. Josh Allen, again, new scheme, new regime for Josh Allen. You've now got Trevor Lawrence in the mix, who is playing like we all thought he was going to play. The AFC is stacked. Justin Herbert, depending on what he does, like it's all up for grabs for them. Like the top, maybe like 6 out of the top 10 quarterbacks live in the AFC, and Drake May now finds himself amidst the category of that.
Yeah,
and the Patriots
you've also, and one team you didn't
10.
mention there was the Denver Broncos in the AFC as well.
The Broncos, of course, because of course, right? It never ends for. We always talk, we spoke about that even in preseason, that the AFC is the sort of half you don't want to really be in because it's just really constant.
Don't. Yeah, the Patriots team done well this year, but like I said, they're not an elite team. Going to come up against challenges, they are going to really struggle against those teams next year, especially the way they played in the Super Bowl. That's the thing.
And that's all on tape. Your defense can see it.
Is it too early for a too early take?
No.
The Bills will win the Bills will win the AFC next year, right?
And you don't think the Patriots will make the playoffs?
No, I don't think they will. That AFC is far too stacked. So many teams in the AFC this year underperformed massively this year. Down to injuries, down to different aspects of things. A lot of teams underperformed. Can the Patriots, if the Ravens play at their best, if the Bengals play at their best, the Broncos play at their best, so the Bills play at their best.
The Jags,
the Texans.
The Colts, with what they're looking like now.
There's so many teams in that AFC that the Patriots are going to have to win more than 10 games to have a shot at the playoffs. With that schedule, I've already got them losing 9. I'm going to say Patriots aren't making the playoffs next year.
There you go.
It's way too early, I'm going to say it.
So the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl again next year, or make the Super Bowl.
No, they're not. They're not going to win it. The Cowboys are clearly going to win it. No, I'm not going to go out and say I don't think the Patriots. I'm not going to say that about the Seahawks. I just think the Patriots, they got there too soon. They peaked too soon. The expectation next year is going to be massive on them, and I don't think they'll live up to that expectation next year. And that's through no fault of their own. They're a team that I don't think is ready for that level of consistent runs to the playoffs and Super Bowls and stuff like that. I just don't think they're good enough to do it, and I think next year they maybe... It's hard to say they'll take a step back, because I don't think necessarily they'll take a step back. I think other teams will take a step forward. And the schedule gets harder for them, and it'll just become more challenging for them. So I'm not going to say they're going to regress. Positionally wise and result wise, yeah, they might. Performance wise, I think it's just teams around them are going to evolve and get better, and I think that's going to work against them rather than them being a worse team next year, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it's okay, because the Patriots can't make the Super Bowl next year because the colour's not in the logo. So if you believe the conspiracy.
That's true.
But the Seahawks colour technically is, but that's okay. Right. So I think we've blabbered on enough for this evening. So Super Bowl 60 will be remembered for trench dominance, a young quarterback's harsh lessons, Kenneth Walker's MVP performance, and a halftime show watched by millions of people worldwide, and really not much else. And that sadly brings us to the end of our weekly episode format based around the NFL. Only like 210 days to go. We are going to do a bit of a roundup of the season, where I imagine there will be lots of shouting back and forth between us, some way too early 2026 season predictions like the one that's just happened, and potentially a very early Super Bowl 61 pick. Plus, we will, of course, have more NFL content to carry us through the off-season, from the combine, free agency, and the draft, all to come. Gav has dropped off, but Dan Gav, thank you very much for joining me, not just tonight, but throughout the season. It's been a great season for the podcast. And I know Brian isn't here, but also he's been a great addition to the team for us this year, I think.
Yeah, there'll be a few people watching wondering where Gav just disappeared to, because unfortunately he had family duties to carry out. That's why he just disappeared without saying anything. So yeah, it's been a great season. This was also our first full season covering the NFL. We tried it last year for the playoffs and done weekly episodes. Didn't miss a single week this year, which was great. And it's been good. It's been good fun talking week to week basis. I think we are all ready for a wee bit of a break from talking about the NFL on a week to week basis. But for those that follow us regular, those that don't know, we will be back very soon with our In Conversation series, which will see us through the off season and going forward. Loads of very exciting things coming up in the world of NFL, American football, flag football, football.
So much flag
over the next
football.
6 months that
the
we
flag
are going to be
stuff
right in
coming
the
up
heart
is
of.
wild. Yeah.
And we're going to be right in the heart of all that. So do not fear, we will not be off your screens for very long.
And also, just a big thanks to everybody who's listened to us babbling on for these weekly shows and beyond that, because without everybody engaging with us and enjoying our content, then we wouldn't be able to do half of the fun stuff that we now get to do. So we really appreciate everybody who listens to me in particular babble quite often.
That's the thing. Everybody just loves it. We just talk nonsense. So people love you talking nonsense. So people love you throwing out ridiculous, far too early picks. It's a favourite thing to do. As soon as the Super Bowl's finished, you need to get your 2026 season. So I've went early with mine, but I like it. Everybody watches us, everybody listens to us, everybody follows us on social media. It allows us to have this fun. It allows us to do what we do on a week-to-week basis. And for us, it's an absolute joy and a pleasure to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and all that being said, if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, please make sure you do on all podcast platforms so you can get your episodes the minute they drop, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok for all our latest content. And until next time, we will see you soon.